Welcome to The Shutter. This is a collection of short stories that I thought you'd really enjoy. This first is a viewer submission. It's from Bill, a special ed teacher in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My name is Bill. I'm a 48-year-old special ed teacher in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have a strange experience to tell you about. It happened to me around 2005. The call center company I worked for was housed at the Cityplex Towers here in Tulsa, formerly known as the City of Faith Medical and Research Center, started by Oral Roberts in the early 80s. It's my understanding that they did a lot of cancer treatment at that facility while it was open. I mention this because I would think there was a lot of death in those 3 towers. So on to my story. I came to work as I always did each morning. I entered the towers and walked alone down a long hallway. There's another hallway that paralleled that one about 30 feet to the north. They connect at a breezeway of elevators that I used to go to the 5th floor where I worked. As I approached the breezeway, one of the elevators came into view. I saw a person step into the elevator and the doors began to close. I started jogging to catch the door so I could avoid waiting for another elevator. I didn't see anyone else in the breezeway. I was able to stop the doors. I stepped into the elevator and turned to my right to press the 5th floor button. Upon facing the panel, I saw the 9th floor button was lit up. Not thinking much about it, I pressed for the 5th floor. I turned farther to my right, fully expecting to greet the other occupant I saw enter the elevator, who must have been headed for the 9th floor, but to my surprise, I was the only person in the elevator. A feeling of shock came over me. I really wouldn't say fear, but definitely shock and amazement, along with a very creeped out feeling. I also quickly questioned in my mind what I saw. Where did they go? Who pressed the 9th floor button? What seemed like forever, the elevator eventually stopped on my floor, and I stepped out, completely dumbfounded. I know that I saw a person enter that elevator, the back of a person with a white outfit. It's been 15 years, so the imagery of what they were exactly wearing has faded, but I know I saw someone step onto that elevator. Who or what, I will probably never know. Very creepy, Bill. Thank you for that. Once, on a road trip in northern Maine, I stopped to stay at a bed and breakfast. While checking in, the owner tells me the room next to mine is undergoing some repairs and not to open the door. I went to my room to drop off my things, then poked around the house a little, and with nothing else to do, I defied the owner's request and decided to see the room that needed repairing. I tried the door, and it was locked. I wondered why the owner would even bother warning me about this room, since it's locked anyway. I peeked through the keyhole, and the room beyond isn't actually being repaired. It's completely empty, except for a figure in the far side of it, sitting in a chair, facing the wall. I stood up, kinda creeped out. Just to make sure I wasn't imagining things, I bent down and looked through the keyhole again. This time, I didn't see the figure or the room at all. Just something red, like someone was blocking the keyhole with something. I was a little weirded out, but managed to go to bed. At breakfast with the owner the next morning, I asked him casually about the repairs in the next room. The owner sighs and says, "Truthfully, I don't rent out that room because so many people have told me it's haunted by a ghost with red eyes." When I was about 14, my parents left me alone overnight for the first time. I grew up in a small farming community, so my parents really had nothing to worry about. They left, and I decided to take a bubble bath and paint my nails like all girls everywhere, obviously. While I was in the bath, I heard our back door open. I thought I was hearing things, and besides, I had locked all the doors per my mom's orders. But then, I heard the kitchen floor squeaky spot, the spot that always creaked every time someone stepped on it, and my heart fell into my stomach. I didn't know what to do, so I just went under the bubbles and left my head out. I heard footsteps getting closer till I could see 2 shoes through the crack between the door and the floor. I could hear a person breathing. They stood there for about 30 seconds and then walked away. A few seconds later, I heard the front door slam shut. I stayed in the tub until the water got freezing cold. I decided whoever it was had gone, so I got out, got dressed, and quickly went out to check the doors and call the police. When I got to the front door, I could see the door still bolted from the inside. I went through the house and checked the doors and all the windows, every one locked from the inside. I have a good imagination, but there's no way I imagined that sound and seeing those shoes under that door. I was in my early 20s, working swing shift at the time, commuting about 100 miles each way, so it was usually around 2 in the morning by the time I got home. I saw the monster, as I called it, on the northernmost section of Trunk Road in the Matanuska Valley in Alaska. This area is almost smack between the towns of Palmer and Wasilla. I was only about 10 miles from home at this point, so it must have been around 2 a.m. Trunk Road is narrow, 2-lane road, consisting of nothing but twists and turns. The surrounding terrain is somewhat swampy and thick with black spruce. It was late October, just a few days before Halloween. There was no snow on the ground, but it was cold enough to be wary of ice. I was driving an '82 Subaru about 20 miles an hour around a curve when my headlights caught a large, dark figure up ahead, about 6 car lengths away. I instinctively let off the gas, coasting closer. At first, I assumed it was a moose, as the area is infested with them. But no, it was standing upright. A bear then? No, not a bear. It looked so strange, tall enough to be an uncommonly large bear, but far too slender, and it looked like it has spikes running down its neck and back. A Halloween prop? It was an odd but effective place for one. All those thoughts ran through my head in a fraction of a second. The car was still coasting closer as I could see more details. It was a standing profile, gazing across the road. I could clearly see its wolfish muzzle and large upright ears. The spikes on its back were in fact clumps of fur. Its spine curved in a smooth and very natural-looking way. It was standing in the ditch, inches from the pavement. Because I was focused on its upper body, I do not recall anything about its back legs, or if it had a tail. I did see its front legs, though, very doggy-looking, hanging awkwardly down and slightly towards its front, exactly as you'd expect if a dog stood upright. While it clearly had a canine look, there was still something off about it that I cannot articulate. It was perfectly still, and at this point, given the proximity to Halloween, I was quite convinced it was some sort of Halloween prop, because it was clearly not any kind of existing animal. I was deeply impressed, and gently stepped on the brakes, intending to stop and examine it more closely. Then, it turned its head towards me. In the tiny fraction of a second that it took for it to swivel its head, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. The fluidness of its movement removed any and all doubt that this was some kind of Halloween prop. It was horribly and terrifyingly alive. The pale, off-white glow of its eyeshine in the headlights destroyed any possibility of a human in a costume. I sat there, gaping at it in shock for a few seconds, the car barely moving by now, but still inching closer. As I was almost upon it, I think it could have leaned forward and touched the car if it had wanted. I had to look up to see its face. I'm a bad judge of such things, but I am 5'4", and it was a heck of a lot taller than me. Tall like a polar bear standing 7 or 8 feet, I really can't say. I've only been on that section of road a few times since, never alone and never in the dark. For the next several years of driving that commute, I went 20 miles out of my way to avoid Trunk Road. The thing never made any aggressive moves, but there was something about it that felt very predatory. I never saw anything remotely like it again, and never heard any stories about it in the area. I I was on patrol as a deputy sheriff for the county and was usually assigned to the Highway 13 and Highway 30 corridors. I recall that particular July 1st, a young man, 16 or 17 years old, had been sucked into a storm drain which emptied into Cedar Lake near the Quaker Oats plant. This is a place with heavy foot traffic and located in an urban setting and is bordered by Mohawk Park. As the search went on into the night, the local PD got the county involved. I parked my cruiser at what I believe was the electric company's storage yard. The yard had what I estimate to be a 10-foot fence that ran parallel to a paved bike trail on the other side, which runs a large concrete spillway to siphon off floodwaters. I arrived at what I estimate to be roughly 11:30 p.m. to 11:45 p.m. I estimate only because I assure you that there was never, nor will there be, an official statement or record with my name on it telling this story. As I left the lot, I was at the north end of the lake and headed west on foot. There was a lot of brush and saplings between the spillway and the trail. I proceeded on to a point where the trail turns south, where Cedar Lake empties into the Cedar River, under the railroad tracks leading into Quaker Oats. There are multiple train tracks at the turn I mentioned before, and only the track farthest from me had a train on it. With my attention on the spillway, I hardly noticed at first a faint red-colored light in the distance north of my position. It was coming down the track on the other side of the train. I thought it might be the taillights of a car. Not being from that patrol route, I had no knowledge that there was, in fact, no road in that direction. There's not much in the world that scares me. Put simply, I've seen some stuff in my days, but nothing prepared me for that night. The lights disappeared, and that was that, or so I figured. About 5 minutes passed before I hear a snorting, almost sniffing sound coming from the other side of the tracks. When I turned, the first thing I saw were the eyes. They glowed a dull red. The thing was at least 8 foot tall and pushing 450 pounds. I judge this by the fact that I'm 6'4" and weigh about 280. I turned my light on, and to this day I wish I hadn't. It had pointed ears and a long muzzle, and it looked me right in the face before it bolted into the timber. It was not a mask, and it was not a person in a costume. Who would walk up on an armed man with a police radio in full uniform and risk getting shot? I remember it was surreal. I know what's in the dark now. People can say or think what they want, but even with a chambered round and a full magazine and a Glock 40, I didn't feel like I had enough firepower. I unholstered and fell back toward the trail and to the electric company storage yard. Putting the fence to my back, I made a hasty retreat to the lot where my cruiser was. I don't think I holstered my pistol till I got out of the park. I never spoke of it then, and honestly don't know why I am now, but one thing is for certain, it knew I was there, and it was watching my every move. I'll never go back, and I no longer work with the department since becoming a minister, but I still carry a Glock with a hollow point round tipped with silver if, and I rarely do, leave my home at night. Wow, I don't know what to think about Dogman, but when I hear an account like that last one, coming from a police officer turned minister, I gotta believe the man knows what he saw and is telling the truth. Well, that wraps up this installment. Hope you enjoyed them. If you did, give them a thumbs up. And if you really want to help out the channel, share it. It doesn't matter where, Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media site. I truly do appreciate you all, and I love reading the comments. But once again, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you back here next time for The Shutter.